I don't know if you know this, but Courageous Girls is a donor-funded nonprofit. And because of generous donors like you, we are able to bring this resource, the Courageous Girls podcast, your way. We have free online curriculum from second grade all the way through high school, and it is equipping moms with intentional conversations and knowing how to do safe and healthy community with every topic that we need to address with our daughters in today's world. Mental health is on the decline, and girls especially are vulnerable due to our social media and digital age. It's a selfie culture. And so learning how to find our value and our worth and our identity in Christ, but also to have healthy tools like conflict resolution and regulating our emotions, caring for our emotions, learning how to find our gifts and recognize our place. The comparison game doesn't have to happen for us girls. Moms and daughters alike are finding healing and wholeness and confidence and resiliency, all things that we need to be able to use our voice and our gifts and our call in the kingdom. I am so grateful that you are on this journey with us. And if you feel led to participate or know someone who would love to help us, you can go to courageousgirls.com/donate and help us in this season. Thankful for you and for all that God is doing through Courageous Girls. Well, welcome back to the Courageous Girls podcast. I'm your host, Tara Matson, and today I have a guest with me. Some of you know this because you're doing Courageous Girls curriculum, and some of you don't. The Courageous Girls curriculum hits on every topic under the sun. From second grade all the way through high school, I'm trying to help moms be intentional and have very specific conversations. I give you the guides, the language, on everything. So think about it. It's probably in there. Mean Girls, bullying, social media, big emotions, and definitely sexuality and gender. And so we process it in a grace-based way, knowing that everybody has their own story, has cultural pieces, even denominationally. We have, for those in the church, we have different views on different aspects. So I'm not telling you this is the way. I'm giving you a teed up conversation of here's the design, here's the research, and I want you to be talking to your daughter and really leaning into her. But sometimes you guys ask, what else do you recommend? And so I brought Kristen Miele. Nope, I didn't say it right. Kristen, how do we say it?
It's okay. Miele.
Miele.
Exactly.
It's Italian, people.
Yeah.
It's Italian.
It is.
I love it. Okay. So I brought Kristen. Kristen's here today. She's come up with this beautiful curriculum called Sex Ed Reclaimed, and you're going to learn all about it in this time. But welcome, Kristen. So glad to have you.
Thank you for having me, Tara. I'm excited to talk today.
Yeah, so good. You have, all of us have a story, right? And usually our stories shape a little bit of what we're called to and why we do what we do. So let's just talk a little bit about your story and even just your own relationship with why you started teaching about sexuality and gender and why this is such a passion. So let's start with who you are, and then we'll move to your expertise.
Okay. I am a Christian woman. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I was a missionary overseas. I grew up in a wonderful family, and to this day just have faith-based parents who love Jesus, and my siblings do too, their spouses. It's incredible. We're all raising our kids too. So I had a great upbringing, but I never had conversations about sex with my parents or my siblings. And when I went to grad school, in fact, to this day, Tara, you're the only person to tell me that you kind of wanted to be a sex ed teacher as you were growing up. Truly, I never really hear that, especially from people who are faith-based. But I know that you have a different story as well, like you're saying, stories. But I never wanted to be one. And it was partially because of what I just said. I never had these conversations. And so in graduate school, when I was studying for my master's in public health, I was assigned to teach human sexuality. And I really thought it was a temptation from Satan. I thought that it was something I wasn't supposed to be investing my time or energy in. And I was very confused because I had been praying for a job to pay for grad school. And this is what the university offered me almost instantaneously after my prayer time. And I took the job because I didn't have another option. And I was curious if maybe this was an answer to prayer because I wasn't really sure. As I did that, my first semester teaching was really poor. I was really afraid. And so whenever you're doing something out of fear and just fear, it doesn't go so well for you or the people who are experiencing it around you. And I had a light bulb moment, thankfully, in prayer again, where I gave up my teaching position to the Lord and said, what's the purpose of this? Why am I doing this? Is this from Satan? Sex is bad. I shouldn't even be talking about it. I certainly shouldn't be teaching. And God just gently and powerfully, as he does, it's like, where'd you get that from? Why do you think sex is bad? It's my gift to you. And with that, I know that people do not all know God. They don't all follow him as Lord or Savior. And so they're going to do their own thing with sex. And that's how we end up where we are today in this world. But suddenly I just had this paradigm shift of, oh, sex is a really good gift. And in fact, not only are we allowed to talk about it, we're encouraged to talk about it because the Bible talks about it. And I started looking at scriptures and really just trying to study what is healthy and holy sexuality from a perspective of, oh, this is a good study. This is not some gift that God is withholding or some forbidden fruit, but rather it's one of his gifts that we should seek to understand because it helps us to understand more of him. And so thankfully, I began that path about 15 years ago now and have never really strayed from teaching sex ed too much since. I've tried some other things, but ultimately, even on the mission field, God has called me back to teaching sex ed. And I don't teach to adults primarily. I very much focus on kids. That is my sweet spot. I love talking to children and to teens about this topic, but I recognize that that's a really hard thing to do. And that is why I do offer my expertise and provide this curriculum for families, is because I want families to get to hear those teachings as well and see how it's possible, how you can do it.
Yeah, it is possible. And so much of the Courageous Girls curriculum, it's fun because probably 70% of the moms are just so excited to be able to do this with other moms and daughters to talk through the changes of our body and God's plan for sex. And they have a lot of fun with it. But there's usually like 30%. I don't think those numbers are exact, but the stories I hear, there's usually 30% that really feel like maybe I made a mistake by adding those things into the lessons, even so early, because I'm trying to help moms lead their daughters in a world that is a bit over sexualized. And also knowing that a lot of Christian families, similar to maybe your own, don't have language or don't know how to talk about God's design with such goodness. And as a clinician, 20 plus years, I've seen the hard things that have come out of either not talking about it or being used and abused in the wrong ways, and experimented with it in lots of different ways. So we actually, when we learn well, we have God's roadmap and we can make some healthier choices. We still don't always make the best choices. We can make some healthier choices. So I love your passion. I love what you're doing. I love that you've been staying faithful for 15 years to this.
Thanks.
What is one of the things that you've been seeing? Let's talk specifically about Christian moms, capital C. That's a broad label. But those that say they follow Jesus, what do you see as the common struggle here around sexuality and being able to bring this into the home?
I would say the two things that come directly to mind are a word you already mentioned and something probably a lot of your listeners can guess at. One is their story. Their story makes it really hard for them to teach because we all, as you're insinuating, have our own baggage. This is why clinicians are so important. We all have the sex ed that we lacked or that we gained, but it actually wasn't a gain, or the places we learned that were just really inappropriate, even if they came from a good heart or if they didn't. And so that makes talking to our kids about sex because we don't know how to separate all of that in order to make conversations healthy. And then closely aligned with that is my second point, which is that there are no examples for these women and men to teach their children. And they have never seen it done effectively. The most they've maybe seen it done is either with adults now, a good church sermon, a few talks that their parents had with them. Maybe they grew up in a really anatomically correct family who was really proactive about teaching all the terms. They had a, clinician in the family or a medical practitioner of some sort, but it wasn't enough. And it also wasn't timely because they were teaching for then. And now there's the internet, to say the least.
Mm,
And
true.
there's constant media. And I really think the world has been sexualized for over sexualized even for a really long time. It's not just the 2000s or 90s or 80s or 70s, but the delivery of it, the means of it has never been what it is now. And that's where the rubber really meets the road. How do we engage with that conversation that's happening without saying something we really regret or we wonder if it's okay? That's really difficult. And so I understand
Mm.
that challenge for parents.
Yeah, it is a real challenge. And so we just want to normalize it for those that are listening. Like
Yes.
it brings up our story, brings up all kinds of emotions. Sometimes we're not even aware of why do I even feel that way or why do I want to shut that down or that just makes me really uncomfortable. And the other side that you're saying is like it's we've been over sexualized. This is not new under the sun. I mean, I'm writing right now, and I'm taking Galatia, the Church of Galatia, and the Church of Corinth, and the Church of Corinth had all kinds of
Yes,
sexuality and
exactly.
moral issues, right? Because culturally, it was kind of like Las Vegas where they
Oh,
were
yeah.
planted, and so that dynamic, we're going, oh my gosh, I can't believe we have that happening now, and I go, well, if we were in that church,
Mm-hmm.
it would be a little much. So I love that you're bringing back the bigger perspective to help us to not panic. However, the internet is a new thing. So talk a little bit about how you're seeing that shape uh, children and teens and their worldview around sexuality.
Sure. So for generations and generations, really for millennia, when kids had questions, when youth had questions, they could only ask their parents, which didn't always happen, right? Still doesn't, or their peers. And peers give us false information, but they're still a person.
Mm.
And it's slower and it's relational. That's the silver lining, I guess. However, now it's not like that. For 20 plus years, when people have had questions, they have gone to the internet. It is the most natural place now to go with any question you have under the sun. And kids have a ton of questions. And I actually think, and I'm sure you do, and your listeners do, that it's a God given trait of ours. It's a God given quality that we ask questions because I do think that draws us into the creator of
Mm.
things and the purpose and the intention. And God is behind really all of that. But unfortunately, when you have questions and you don't know who to ask, or you're uncomfortable, or you're not supposed to talk about it because they've never talked to you about it, then you do go to the internet for your question.
Mm.
And that is a really negative place for information. You get voices that are all over the place, mostly very secular in that they have their own opinion, but it's only based in their own truth. You find pornography, of course, and you get into some places that just offer really cruddy answers for really great questions. And that begins your journey of sexuality.
Mm.
And it has implications, honestly, for your children. Like you might be searching when you're 12 and you never get on a healthy path again. And now you're a man or a woman who has children of their own, and you're still on a bit of a
Mm.
awkward path or an unhealthy path entirely.
Mm.
And so I think it's so important and actually can change the next generation, can change your children. Because if your children are impacted by healthy and holy conversations about sex, well, that's incredible. That's such an opportunity. But if they're impacted by the internet and then their peers, mostly in regards to sex and sexuality, well, then all bets are off.
Yeah. And it's so interesting how God will use everything in our stories, particularly
Yes.
with our children. So to be able to have holy and healthy conversations around sex could be a part of our healing journey, right? I mean, I hear that all the time, Kristen, with Courageous Girls, as moms didn't know they were getting into Courageous Girls for them because
Uh,
they're in a way reparenting themselves and discovering answers, healthier answers to their questions that didn't get, because our parents, generationally just didn't have the same kind of cultural norm that it's okay to talk about anything and everything under the sun. So I love that you're normalizing questions and really trying to help parents be the source of trusted, research, and the internet leads all kinds of places. So what do you think are some of the mistakes? Let's start with mistakes, and then we're going to lead parents, particularly moms of daughters, to some things to do. But what are some of the no-nos that you're like, when it comes to talking to our daughters and our kids about sex and gender, here's some things I would just say, don't do or don't say. Mm-hmm. Don't have them look on the internet. Don't Google it together because you're going to probably have a bunch of porn pop up.
Yes. Yes, that's one big no-no. A second big no-no is to ignore or to avoid. And so if you even say something like, well, let's talk about that later. Maybe your child did ask at a really inappropriate time. You're at a meal for your other kid's birthday, and grandma's there and your aunts and uncles, all the siblings, whatever. And they're like, wait, Mom, why does she not have a penis? It's like a little boy who doesn't get it, or who knows, anything, insert any question. It's like, initially, I really think it's helpful to say, that's a great question, but we're at a birthday party right now. We're at dinner. And so actually, we're just going to talk about that in a little bit. Okay. For now, we're going to finish our meal, whatever it is, whatever the situation is. We're going to drop your friends off at their houses first, and then we'll talk at the rest of the car ride home. So make sure that when you do have to avoid a question for a minute, you have to sidestep that conversation at first, that you really do get back to it. So don't ignore or avoid their questions. Answer them. Even if it makes you uncomfortable, even if you're surprised by it, even if you're wondering, why me? Like, why is my kid have to ask me this? Why can't it be him? Answer the question. They're asking you, and it sounds corny, but I sign off all my emails with the scripture from Esther, like, for such a time as this. And so if your child is asking, it is this is it. This is your moment. Doesn't mean you'll do it perfectly. That's okay. You have many conversations to go with them, but answer their question. Don't avoid it, which is what many previous generations did when they were uncomfortable. Another no-no is that and this one's tricky because it's just hard to do. Control your body language. So essentially, a no-no would be, don't freak out is the no-no.
Really, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. What? Where did you hear that from? So your tone of voice, your face, your disgust, your shock. That was something I did have to develop because I taught in classrooms primarily, in mostly secular environments, so public schools. And there was so many questions. And so really covering my poker face. But then another no-no is to not assume, like, you don't know what they're asking. Just because a kid this is an example of a mom recently who shared this with me. Her child asked what a boobie was, and she really wanted to correct him on this, like, how that's slang and respecting women and what breasts were, whatever. And she said, well, what do you mean instead? Which I highly recommend. And the child said, what's a booby trap? And so that was a very different conversation than her, like, going on and on about boobs, right? So really ask your child, what do they mean? I mean, I can remember when my daughter was like 4, my older daughter, she said, I want to be a boy. And instead of being like, what do you mean? Is this a conversation about trans? What is going on? Her gender identity? I just said, what do you mean? Humbly, kindly, what do you mean? She said, well, she goes to a private school, and so she has to wear like a jumper. And she's like, the boys can wear pants more, and I don't always get to wear pants. That was it. So it's important to figure out the question behind the question, the comment behind the question, whatever it is, the story, because you don't always know what they're asking. Even if they say, what is sex? You don't know what they're asking until you know. So always say, what do you mean? Don't jump to conclusions. Control that body language, which might take some time to practice. Yeah, it's a habitual thing, but those are some of my no-nos.
Excellent. And I'm loving the, like, what do you mean? And especially around the gender piece, I do think we put our adult and our story and even our wirings on top of our children. And so your kiddo is their own little person with a different culture and a different wiring and a different story and a different developmental age. So recognizing that piece and body language, working on that on every conversation, right?
True.
So that we don't shame our kids on any questions they have about God or about friendships or about you. But that booby question, booby trap. I would have gone down a whole conversation and realized, you wanted something different.
Yep.
That's so good. So good. Okay, so let's talk about the do's. You implied some there for sure, but when you're thinking, okay, moms, particularly, that's our audience. If we've got dads or grandmas or aunts or uncles that are listening, wonderful. I'm so glad you're here. But thinking, Mom, here's some of the things I really want you to consider and think about when you want to do healthy and wholesome and godly, but also honest conversations around sexuality and gender.
Yes, I love the last word. I am all about honesty and authenticity. Honesty is such a trait of the Lord. Like, he cannot lie. And I think about, not to be too dramatic, but I think about Satan. And even going back to the beginning of my story I was telling you about, he is the father of lies. He wants to convince us that what he has is correct and what God says is actually not true, right? Like, didn't God say? That's exactly his language and his tone. He wants to make us just absolutely mistrust the Lord, which is the path of destruction. And so I'm really aware of that in teaching sex ed and the spiritual warfare component of answering these questions. I do think that's an important part of this with your children as you are fighting that. And again, not to make it too dramatic, but that really is to like encourage us and to equip us to know the word, know what the Lord says, but also be in prayer. So do would be pray about this. I mean, I know plenty of couples who get married, for example, and then never even pray about their own sex life, or like my husband and I like pray about our sex life together. And I think that still sounds weird to some people. And actually it's like the best thing ever. I enjoy it because we're talking to God about the thing he created and the thing that is very much reflective of his goodness. And so pray about all things sex as it relates to your marriage, but also as it relates to your daughters, your kids. If you feel weird doing that, then keep going. Press on. Keep praying about it. Journal if that's easier, but give that to the Lord. Whether your kid asked a strange question, you're preparing for questions, you're preparing to talk to them, to enter into this topic. Pray about it and really listen. I love listening to the Holy Spirit on this because he has words to say, and they are good and powerful, and they're full of truth. So do pray. Another do would be to be honest. Do practice honesty. So an example of this, it sounds simple, right? Oh, she's telling me to tell the truth. Duh. Well, it's a bit trickier when it comes to this topic. For example, let's say your 6-year-old ask, how did I get here? How did I get here? And you say, well, you're practicing good that you're like, well, what do you mean? And they say, well, how did I get out of your belly here? And you say, oh, you were born through the vagina. You came out through the vagina at the hospital. Okay. Wait, then how did I get in there? Well, you come from sperm and an egg. Okay, so I'm being honest. I'm telling the truth. Okay. Do you have sperm? No. Only men have sperm. So how did the sperm get in your body? You're like, oh no. And so you start blabbering, you start talking about storks, maybe you just start going on a completely different path. You get nervous and it comes out of fear, right? This conversation is now entering a different space where you're really uncomfortable, which is understandable. That is not honest. That's not honest. And so the trick of this is really, how do you answer to a 6-year-old? Because you would answer very differently to a 10-year-old or a 14-year-old this question. But you can answer honestly. You can be truthful. When a child is asking you questions about sex, you can say, oh, that's a special action between a couple and it creates a baby. And you could go step by step into really being honest, but answering their questions. And you can always say, hey, that's a great question. Can I get back to you on that? I want to talk about that later. So you might not know the answer to the question, but that's okay. You can do some research. You can take a moment, pray with your spouse, journal, whatever you need to do to really get back to them. maybe you take a pause with them and say, "Oh, can you explain to me more what your question is?" And that just gives you a moment to recoup. But really practice honesty with your children. I try to encourage parents to never use silly metaphors like birds and the bees, or these big pictures that actually don't really help explain the thing that you're talking about, but rather might confuse in particular littles. So practice discernment with that. I'm not saying it's prescriptive for every conversation, but I don't like those unless I truly feel that they're helpful to the conversation and not confusing. And so that's where knowing your daughters, knowing more about them and their personalities is really helpful. So you know your kid, you can answer better than most other people can. So do know that you are equipped to do this, even if you don't feel you are. Your feelings are valid, but it doesn't mean that they're true, right? And so you are their parent. You are the right person for the job. You are meant to do this, even if you have some mess ups here and there. Last night or a couple nights ago, I was watching a show with my daughter and it was about nature. So, of course, they were making babies. And she was like asking me, she's like, but how do the birds do that? And like, I know that particular answer. I am a sex ed teacher, but I don't know how birds. So anyway, I was like, oh, that's a really good question. I'll have to get back to you. Right. So just practicing that honesty and then actually returning to the question is really important. So I think those are a couple do's, be honest, do pray about it, do talk to your spouse. I never recommend that only one person talk to them. This should be a partnership, a team thing. I don't care if you have 3 girls and your husband's like, well, that doesn't apply to me because I'm not a girl. No, he is part of the conversation. He needs to show the healthy masculinity, healthy male view of sex and sexuality, be in those conversations. Destigmatize stuff like periods. Like if dad needs to go out and get tampons, or he's like, oh, you got your period, do you need anything? Like that should be a normal conversation in the home, if at all possible. So really I guess the do here is do be a team. Like you are already one. And so if you have that spouse, then do partner as a team in these conversations. Another do is do continue the conversation. This is not a talk. This is not a one-off. This is not even just a weekend. This is a lifetime conversation that you get to have with your children. My husband and I, post the mission field, we had really wonderful marital counselors who that was the first time we'd ever done something like that. And it was incredible. Highly recommend it. Anyway, one of the things they told me once they found out what I did and what I was creating, because at that time, Sex Ed Reclaimed was just coming to fruition. They said that they never really talked to their kids. They had girls about sex, but they apologized for that later on and explained a little bit as to why they never did with their girls. And their girls are in their 30s now, but now they have conversations about sex. And obviously their girls, have kids, they have grandkids, they know what they're doing. But at the same time, they're getting to repair those gaps and those pain, hurts, wounds, whatever, from before, and have those conversations now with their mom. And it just sounded like really beautiful, and their dad as well. And I loved hearing that because I was like, okay, here are 2 baby boomers who are now having conversations with their daughters. And I think that's really special and precious too. So the last one I'll say is do start. If you're listening to this, it's your sign to begin today. Even if if you are a grandparent and your kids are boomer, or you're in the baby boomer generation and your kids are grown, do start. But if your daughter's 2, do start by just naming parts of the body, getting comfortable with that. This is your vagina. I'm changing your diaper. This is your vulva. Because sometimes that's hard for people. They never had appropriate terms, or they never saw those used with kids, and they feel a bit weird about that. And so do start. It's really a practice. It's a pattern, like a lot of things, even in our faith are. It's a practice you get into, and you refine, you're sanctified in, you pray about, and conversations about sex with your kids are no different. When you're talking to your kids about this topic, it is really no different. You have to be in a regular practice, and that makes it easier for both parties.
Yeah, so well said. And I just want to say as a disclaimer, if sex has been used to harm you, you really need to do some work with a professional to make sure that you do that work. Otherwise, it does get passed down generationally, and kind of the pendulum swing of our response. And so knowing that is a piece that we're carrying. And a lot of what you're saying is in the context of healthy and whole and in goodness. So I love it, Kristen. As we end, would you just talk about Sex Ed Reclaimed and what your hope is that how families would use this curriculum?
Sure. So Sex Ed Reclaimed is content for kids 3 to 18. So it is made for children. It's curriculum for them. So it's a digital library. I don't mean for this comment to sound overwhelming, but I was really excited about it. I filmed the other day because I'm always adding content to curriculum. So I actually did some pieces on modesty and really reclaiming that conversation so that it's not just about lengths of skirts anymore, but it's actually how the Bible converses about modesty. Anyway, point being, I looked with my videographer at how many videos we filmed, 123. That's how
Beautiful.
much is in the digital library of Sex Ed Reclaimed for these kids to learn from and for parents to be able to click, push and play, watch with their kids or during homeschooling time or this summer when they have more time to do so. So it is a vast curriculum. There's depth, but there's also breadth of material. There's 4 curriculum depending on how old your kids are because it's all very age appropriate. Comes with workbooks and parent tips and things like that. But all of that's available on my website, sexedreclaimed.com. You can get free samples, free ebooks there as well. And I'm really excited about the places it's reaching. I've only been doing this a couple years with the business, at least. And it's in 14 countries. It's all 50 states. And that is truly, I think, because God gave me this vision for Sex Ed Reclaimed. This wasn't something of my own making. It was all just from him. And so I'm excited to hear about its reach and how it's changing the next generation and the conversation around sex.
I love it. And so good. And I just would say for Courageous Girls, mamas, and your groups, this is an added resource and goes way further in depth around this particular topic. When people are going, what resources do you recommend? This is one that I'm often giving and saying it's a fantastic, I think, Kristen, you do a beautiful job of the really overt clarity on how do we explain the body and what's happening in sexuality, all the way to our theology and understanding God's heart for sex and our bodies and being made male and female. And so I love you're a more matter of fact type communicator. And I appreciate that about you, which helps parents have language. And again, is something you can bring mom and dad into the equation if you can partner together on this. Yes. And it can be done as a family, can be done in your community, your Courageous Girls groups, lots of different ways that this can be used. So thank you so much. We'll have all the resources in the show notes. But thank you, Kristen. Thank you for all that you're doing in this part of the kingdom work.
Same to you, Tara. Thank you.